So joining me on the podcast today is Tim Breitbach of Optimal Entertainment. Tim's a writer, producer, director, filmmaker, impresario, all sorts of things. Tim, welcome.
Thank you very much. Glad to be here.
Stick around. We're going to get into some very interesting stuff. Hi there. Welcome to the Screen Lawyer Podcast. I'm Pete Salsich, the Screen Lawyer. And joining me today as my guest is Tim Breitbach. Tim is the owner, founder, chief cook and bottle washer at Optimal Entertainment, a production company here in St. Louis, and somebody I've worked with for more than 15 years. Welcome, Tim.
Hey, thanks for having me finally.
Yeah, I had 6 of your friends before you, didn't I? Something like that.
Yeah, and
well,
she told 2 friends, that kind of thing.
Well, they all paid something to be on, and you did not, so... well, welcome. Seriously, it's great to have you.
Thank you.
And I think it's really kind of interesting, and I want to explore with you a little bit today some of your transition over the years from when we first met. But even going back before that, you had a history as a filmmaker in San Francisco before coming to St. Louis.
Correct.
And let's take us through that, and then you have a really cool project going on now that I want to talk about too.
Yeah, I started in San Francisco, but really my first thing was I was an ad guy. I was a writer, I was a creative director, had my own agency, and during that time, the branded entertainment was really starting. With BMW Films had this amazing kind of long format storytelling. And so we started doing that for other clients like Levi Strauss and a bunch of other things. And my business partner at the time, he was a film director, and being a writer, we started writing a script, and we got a script into the Sundance Institute Filmmakers Labs. Yeah. And it was called Dopamine, and we took that to the labs and literally was sitting next to like Sally Field and Robert Redford and like everybody, so indoctrinated in our first script into some pretty deep waters. And within about 4 or 5 years, we started a production company called Content Films, and we filmed it, and it got in the 2003 dramatic competition at Sundance Film Festival.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's a really, it's an amazing, can people still see that? Is it available?
It's around there. It's kicking around Dopamine. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
The internet is your friend, folks. Check out Dopamine.
Yep. Yeah.
So San Francisco for quite a while, enough that I think you became a San Francisco sports fan pretty strongly, right?
Correct. Yes.
Including in the days when the 49ers were beating up on the Rams back here, right?
Yeah, and then that flipped a little bit. But it's, yeah. And also with the Warriors, I was back in the Mitch Richmond, Tim Hardaway, right. Chris Mullen days, the Run TMC days of yore, well before Steph Curry. So.
Right. Well, what brought you to St. Louis?
I'm from Iowa originally, St. Louis. Not St. Louis, Dubuque, Iowa, which is 6 hours north of St. Louis on the Mississippi River. Yep. And I had friends from college that were here. I had my brother that was the athletic trainer at SLU here at the time. Yep. And my parents were retired and living in Missouri because they had just sold a resort that they had. And we all decided to kind of raise our families together and move to St. Louis and see what fortunes we could make.
Yeah. So I'm glad you're here. It's been great. You and I met 2008, I think, something like that, when I started working with Coolfire, and you were in that early growth when it was just sort of assembling. And I always describe it a little bit as a production company that had been making commercials for TV for a while, for advertising agencies. Sure. And suddenly a combination of things started happening, including some real talent, either moving to St. Louis or moving back to St. Louis to kind of assemble and do something different. And you guys started making original programming, and that's the first time we worked together. Yeah,
what's interesting, though, is we always say, hey, we're the first doing it with Coolfire Originals and doing that. But actually, Jeff and his team and some of the guys that came back, they were doing the high school sports shows and all that kind of stuff beforehand. So literally they always wanted to do original entertainment, but usually the more lucrative side is commercial production. So you got to pay the bills and you got to do it. So what we did is we just had compiled enough people together that would want to do both, and then eventually create an original entertainment division. So it was a right place, right time kind of situation.
And that was a heady time in the reality TV world You still had a bunch of different independent networks, which you don't have anymore. So you could pitch shows to different. You could have a little competition for bidding wars, and then the business kind of changed.
Yeah, the business changed. I mean, it's consolidated. It's also everybody and their dog thought they could start producing reality television, so they did, and then that waters down the product, obviously, and then also, the reality of it is also trying to take jobs away from writers and the other unions and things like that. So it was just a balance, and I think that the gold rush happened in a way, and then it's kind of found its equilibrium and found its footing in a rightful place, because there's a ton of great non-scripted programming, and that's what I really love, is non-scripted versus quote-unquote reality. Right? I don't like manufactured things. I like understanding a construct and then letting people be who they are within the construct, and finding the story in the natural environment. And so that leads me to documentaries, docuseries, that kind of thing. But yeah, so I mean, right now it's a very challenging time for studios and all that kind of stuff. But
it is.
It's not like I've been a studio guy. I mean, the big guys aren't calling me. I mean, since Harvey Weinstein called in 2003, it's been a while.
And probably best that you're not taking his calls anymore.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Miramax is on the phone. Oh, okay.
Yeah. Well, and that's another way in which, and I think it's real, that the industry has begun to change. Yeah. Right? The fact that the way people were treated. I remember seeing it early on at the time of Coolfire on the internship issue, because in the Hollywood area, in the network studio, in the TV studio area, everybody used unpaid interns. An unpaid intern was the only way you could get into the business. Yeah. But they were functionally a version of free slave labor, and eventually the Department of Labor said, wait a second, that's actually not legal at all. And I remember one of the first things I had to do at Coolfire was draft our intern policy to make sure that they were getting college credit or whatever it was, right? Something to comply with the rules for real. There you go. Yeah. And so let's come forward a little bit. Yep. You left Coolfire, started Optimal Entertainment 10 years ago?
7 or 8 years ago.
7 or 8 years ago.
2017.
Okay. And so when that happened, you really went into this true sort of independent filmmaker. And you and I have worked on a number of projects. But the one I'm most interested in, and I wanted you to tell the story about this one because I think it's amazing, is The Final 19. Okay. So tell us about that movie and the why of it for you.
So The Final 19 is the story of Sergeant Dan Havel, who is my second cousin, and he was one of the last 19 POWs to come home from Vietnam. And it's a story about our family, about the war, about his sacrifice, about his journey. And it is a story that's set in Vietnam, but we didn't have the budget to go shoot in Vietnam. Right. But a lot of other people had produced content from Vietnam. So as you and I both know, getting clearance and all of that kind of stuff and making sure the paper trail is clear,
we did a lot of fair use work on that film.
A lot of fair use work.
Absolutely.
And your company was very kind to me in that process too. I really appreciate that. And so in that, it won a number of audience awards at different festivals. It got picked up for distribution, and it can be seen for free right now on YouTube or on Amazon or Tubi or all kinds of different things like that. And the nice thing about it is it was a 14-year journey to get it to where I needed to get it to, because functionally I self-funded it. So it was every little bit, and I sold T-shirts, I sold sweatshirts, I sold hats. It's like whatever I could to. My hourly rate must have been like $1.22 I made. It's just like, but at the end of the day, it needed to be told. And so one of the neatest,
it's a really powerful film,
coolest things was standing with Dan and doing Q&As and standing next to a true hero. Yeah. And I think what we learned is, we came out of COVID with that, and we were at the Julian Dubuque International Film Festival, which is, I said earlier, is where I'm from, and where a lot of the story takes place. And it was out of COVID, and in a very conservative area, we had like 3 packed 300 people screenings. Wow. And the standing ovations and all that kind of stuff. And they weren't for the film, they were for Dan. Yeah. They were part of it because I was just lucky enough to tell his story. But we told it in a way that was unique. We told it in a way that was different. But we also gave Vietnam veterans a normal grunt, a guy in the trenches, could tell the story the way it really happened and not be affected by it.
It's a hard film to watch in a way.
Thank you.
I mean, it is. It's a powerful film. It's very uplifting at the end of the day, but it's hard to watch, which I think is how it should be.
Yeah. And it's just like, and so I started doing something on that film, which is carried forth into other projects, is I was trying to figure out the narrative structure of the film and how to tell the story. And so I wrote a song called "Oh Pow Mia, Set Him Free." And the genesis of the song is Pow Mia's prisoner of war, missing in action. But the family, Dan's family, the Hayfo family, had a vigil for 24 hours every day for 1,153 days that he was in captivity. And so that thing is, I was wondering, if you weren't a Catholic, which we all were, but there was plenty of people that weren't, who were you praying to get these guys home? Because we always have patron saints of something, right? Sure. Somebody in specific. If you're going on a trip, you pay it. If you owe back taxes, it's just like, we got a few, right? And so I said, what if this was like kind of a Greek goddess or whatever, and her name was Palmia? And so basically, I wrote a song that started out to be like a regular song. 6, 7 verses, couple banging, banging midsection, whatever. Well, it turned into be a 34-chapter, 34-verse extravaganza. Wow. That was the narrative spine of the entire film.
Wow.
And I don't think anybody wanted that.
Right.
But it needed it.
Yeah.
And it worked. And then what I've done since then is anytime I start thinking about how I approach the story, I started by writing a song.
Interesting. I never knew that.
Yeah. And so I've got a really interesting project that with the Birdman of Alcatraz, I've got the rights to it. And I wrote this song with Carl Napa Grammy.
Great local music, the super pro in the music industry in St. Louis, for sure.
Tons of Grammy winners. I mean, in the hip hop thing, he just was exploding. But we have this kind of combination where he does the music and I write the words, and so this one's an 11-minute song, of all things.
You've gotten much better.
But I also have a 3-minute, But the idea is, this is from the point of view of Robert, the Birdman of Alcatraz Stroud, a letter to his mother on how he became what he became. It's because I was just a kid. And it's like, and it sounds, we use local young musicians. It sounds like Soundgarden coming back to life, and it is intense, like audio types.
We'll step back a little bit and tell the story about what that's about. Because I remember when you first got involved, we did the book option, and there was all this interesting backstory about what the underlying content was. So take us back to that.
Yeah, so basically Robert Stroud, Birdman of Alcatraz, he was the most infamous inmate in the Federal Bureau of Prisons history. He only committed one crime, a manslaughter, on the way into prison, and he ended up staying into prison his entire life, over 54 years, and there was 40 boxes in his case file at the National Archives. And you go, how in the world does one person get 40 boxes? Well, it turns out that he, when he was in Leavenworth, he not only killed a guard, but he also created a bird business where he wrote books, smuggled out tinctures that could help birds, did all kinds of different things, and then became this foremost authority. And then in true Shawshank kind of pop culture, there was a story about him on the first cover that Marilyn Monroe was on Cosmopolitan magazine. Oh, wow. And there wasn't a lot of media compared to the way there were now. So in the late 50s, early 60s, Cosmo was pretty avant-garde and pretty powerful. And so it's kind of like the Rita Hayworth poster in Shawshank. Right? And so it had that thing. And all of a sudden, this little-known inmate who's on death row with birds explodes into letter writing campaigns and all this kind of stuff, and going all the way to Woodrow Wilson for clemency. And then there's this battle over all these manuscripts that he wrote, which when he wrote them when he was in Alcatraz, because he was shifted to Alcatraz because he was one of those undesirables, right, to put on the rock. And so he wrote this, and in the movie, Burt Lancaster plays Robert Stroud, and he comes into his cell, and Carl Malden,
who was the warden,
or the warden, Shoemaker, the warden, he is sitting there reading these manuscripts.
Oh, wow.
And
I remember that scene.
And they get into this fight about stealing a person's authenticity, integrity, and stuff. That what it's like that the prisoner was going to be a good prisoner in his eyes or his version only,
right?
And stealing their identity, basically. And Stroud had done all this stuff for prison reform, done all these positive things within it, but he also had this kind of. He couldn't get himself out of trouble. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's just, it's like, so the interesting thing, so he wrote these 3 manuscript volumes, and they're called Looking Outward, A Voice from the Grave, and he knew that they would be buried with him in some kind of way. And he also wrote an autobiography of 900 pages until he was age 14. The guy could write, and he was verbose, but it was called Bobby. And we do there's a lot of film, there's a lot of TV series about the making of a murderer. Right?
Yeah.
So early childhood development is such a fascinating area, and his in particular. And so what I say about him...
And you have it in his own words.
In his own words.
And how did you get access to that material?
So people really don't know the story that well, that he died in FedMed in Springfield, Missouri. And so he was trying to release the manuscripts, which were blocked by the government, in court, and a Springfield attorney named Thomas Dudley was the family attorney to try to get the manuscripts released. And then eventually got them released, and then when he died, they reverted to the attorney. And so then my partner in it, James Cornwell, who was a publisher in more of the cooking space, but he got part of it. And so now we share the rights to all of the Birdman's writings. And you did the deal.
Yeah, no, I remember it.
Appreciate it. And so a number of times. And so then in that, we're developing a whole franchise around it. And it's incredibly compelling because it's just as compelling as a Broadway installation versus a 10-episode series for multiple years on a Netflix, because this character is decade after decade after decade. And I mean, he was literally incarcerated during the epidemic, the 2 world wars, the Great Depression.
Wow.
It's just everything
covers
that
such
happened.
the whole first half of the United States.
And so imagine the
20th century.
view from within a prison outward, and how narrow that is. But it reaches Seattle, it reaches obviously San Francisco Bay, reaches the White House, Alaska, Leavenworth. So it's the plains. In fact, his headstone, he's buried in the home of Superman, Metropolis, Illinois.
No way.
Yes. Yeah. And even Superman isn't buried in Metropolis, Illinois. Just a little known fact.
Yeah. There's no Clark Kent headstone, as far as you know?
And as far as we know, Superman never dies.
Well, that's a good point. That's a fair point.
So,
we should make sure the audience knows.
So it's a fantastic, amazing property, and it takes a long time to get a property of that level, but I mean,
you've been working on that for almost as long as I've known you.
Yeah, and I'm probably one of the 3 people in the world that's read all the pages as many times as I've had and such like that. So, but yeah, I'm excited to bring that forward, and as well as other stuff. Yeah,
well, let's bring you forward to current. So you're in here today, obviously, to be guest on the podcast and here in our studio, but you're also here in our offices today with a team on one of the most exciting projects that I've had a chance to be involved in a while. And I think can we talk about it in the world? Are we,
a little bit.
Yeah, can we tease out the name?
We can tease it, probably.
What do you think?
Are you going to get the worldwide exclusive?
Right, exactly.
I mean,
literally part of our meeting upstairs is talking about, no, nobody go out talk to the world until we have a strategy for it. But can you describe a little bit about what this is? It's a really unique property.
Yeah, it's a basic cooking and culture show that combines Family Feud with Top Chef with Shark Tank. Yeah. And so what we're doing is
a little Sopranos overlay, perhaps.
There is
cultural
there's a little cultural overlay, and if you look at the internet, the world of Italian culture and influencers and cooking and all of that has exploded.
Yeah.
And the numbers and the fascination and it's just incredible. And so, and also if you look in history, the mob movies and all that kind of stuff are some of the highest ranked
Right.
and most memorable, as well as Sopranos being the highest ranked series.
Yeah.
All that kind of stuff. And you take it, you go, hey, there's elements of this. And what we basically do is we take the business side of an Italian family, and instead of focusing it on a life of exterior crime or any whatever you want to say, just the cooking, because the cooking is so important to the Italian culture and the family, and the power of the true boss in the Italian family is the nana, right? It's just it's like it's not. It's like whatever you're eating this.
Sit down.
I don't care what you did out there today. You're eating this, But so the idea is we got great inspiration in Pepe Chem, Spaghetti Pepe here at Pinot Restaurant in St. Louis.
Yeah,
came to me
fabulous.
with the idea, and what I do is I help develop properties and really make it from a glint in your eye to a thorn in your side.
Or an opportunity,
Yes,
right?
exactly.
It's a fascinating project, and you've got some powerhouse people attached to it, and we'll get a chance in the near future to talk more about it. But I'm planting that seed for anybody that's listening, because it's going to be fun to see and fun to watch. For sure.
In the near future, we'll be filming here in St. Louis, and hopefully, take advantage of the new wonderful climate available to filmmakers here in St. Louis. And I think that
with the film tax credit that we have,
and it's just I can't thank the people who've been on the ground working on that, and also the legislators who
absolutely
brought it through, and we very much hope to bring that to them, as well as in other ways. We've got a lot of great plans, I think, to celebrate the state in that way.
Yeah, I think it's really it fits so well into what the tax credit is about. Yes, we want to bring out of town films to film in Missouri. Of course, that's something that you're trying to do, and there's a lot of business value, a lot of economic impact on that. But it's also developing things at home and positive things about the region and about the state, and it fits so well in there. And the availability of the tax credit helps immensely in putting together the financing and being able to talk to investors about the value in this and why they should consider this. So I think it's really exciting.
Well, and it's also, as we've long known, it's like we had multiple series at Coolfire that we developed that brought in great revenue streams, from Welcome to Sweetie Pies and the truckloads of truckloads is the wrong word, busloads of people from religious groups, like the Church of Christ of God's conference. Like they would have 20 buses show up at Sweetie Pies. They came from somewhere.
Right.
They're spending their money in the state. They had to go through rural counties. They had to touch everything. I remember a really cool thing is we did a show called Resale Royalty, and that was on Style Network, and it was a lot of fun to work on with the girls from the Vault. But one of the most interesting things is the Cardinals were playing the Red Sox in the World Series.
Right.
And they asked the Red Sox wives what was the one thing that he wanted to do in St. Louis. And they all wanted to go to Women's Closet Exchange on Sappington because they saw the show on Style Network. And it's like, it's such a small anecdote, but it's also the way we have everything here.
Right.
And there's no reason the stories can't be told from here.
Sure.
And it doesn't mean because we can look like anybody or look like any place or anywhere. We're distinctly Missouri here. Like I go, oh, those are Missouri clouds. Those are Missouri bluffs. Those are, you know what I mean? We can make it look like anything.
Sure.
But it's also some of the most amazing movies, whether it's Winter's Bone or, all the kind of stuff like that, are from here, and their stories from here.
Yeah. No, that's exciting. I think you're absolutely right. And there's so much still to come on that.
Oh, yeah.
Well, Tim, this has been great. Thank you for taking a few minutes out of your day. I know you got to head back upstairs to more meetings, and I'll join you in a second. But this is great. I'm only about 12 months behind when I told you I'd have you on, but that's all right.
It's actually been 2 or 3 years. I think I was originally the inaugural episode, but he was throwing me a bone. He didn't know if I'd make it in this league.
Yeah, I needed to wait and see if you had a few successes.
All right.
So, no, this has been great. And folks, if you have enjoyed this, check out the Final 19. I mean it. It is worth your time. But be prepared. Get ready for it, and you will not regret it. You can find it, just as Tim said, on YouTube. Optimal Entertainment, lots of great stuff. Tim, thanks.
You bet.
Really appreciate
Thank
it.
you.
And folks, if you enjoy this content, find us and follow us wherever you get your audio podcasts. And if you're watching us on YouTube, hit that like and subscribe button so you'll get all of our content. And you can always find us at thescreenlawyer.com. Thanks. See you soon.